A couple of things, Jimbo. First of all, have you had any contact with Nick since?
No. Oh, he's called.
You just didn't take the call?
Not going to. We're done.
And
he shows you who he is.
And then I just wanted to...
He's the greatest ever, huh? Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past, or anybody that's ever coached with him. You can find out anything you want to find out, what he does and how he does it. And it's despicable.
All right. Changing gears to the NBA, where the Celtics are getting healthier. Al Horford clearing COVID protocols. He is listed as active for tonight's Game 2 against the Heat. Miami up 1-0 because, among other things, the Celtics didn't have Al Horford or Marcus Smart in Game 1. Smart has been upgraded to probable with a sprained right foot. Derek White, meantime, is going to be out as he attends the birth of his child in Boston. And some bad news for the Mets. They're going to be without Max Scherzer for the next 6 to 8 weeks. The team saying Scherzer is dealing with a moderate to high-grade oblique strain. Pulled himself from his start last night in the 6th inning. Scherzer 5-1 with an ERA of 2.5 in 8 starts this season. All right, let's do this thing. It's football happy hour, and it's college football centric. Chris Hassel joined by Brady Quinn in studio. Josh Pate from our 24/7 Sports Nashville studios. The most explosive May 19th in college football history. I mean, guys, it's almost like Jimbo Fisher knew we were planning the big 100 days until college football show. This is how it all went down between Jimbo and the guy he used to work for, Nick Saban, over the last 24 hours. Take a listen.
I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it.
It's despicable that a reputable head coach could come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way. The narcissist in him doesn't allow those things to happen, and it's ridiculous. But when he's not on top, some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past, or anybody that's ever coached with him. You can find out anything you want to find out, what he does and how he does it. And it's despicable.
Everybody has had a take on social media after this explosion today. Brady, what's yours?
I mean, it's a lot. I mean, I think, you know, Josh has talked about this a lot. There's really no offseason anymore in any realm of football, NFL or college in this respect. But I think what Jimbo Fisher's touching on is what a lot of people have felt for a long period of time was how the meat's actually made when it's all said and done in Alabama. I think to a degree, a lot of people respect Nick Saban for the coaching job he's done. But as far as recruiting goes, they've always felt like he's had a little something extra for his recruits before this era of NIL. But the thing he's always had in his back pocket is the fact that when you're as competitive and winning championships as he is, it's an easy sell in saying to recruits, come here, you'll have a chance to play for a national championship and win one. And oh, by the way, we'll send you on to the NFL as a first-round pick, which they've done now for 14 years straight. That's been what he's been able to hide behind. The reality is there's probably a little more to this story. And I think when you're looking at the words of Jimbo Fisher, who, you know, the spotlight's been shined on him because of what they did at Texas A&M, it's all above board. It's all legal at this point. Now, maybe not inducement is, which is obviously what he's been accused of at this point in time. But, you know, Josh, if you ask people in the collective circles, everyone's saying at Texas A&M, at least at this point, everything they did was above board. There's no harm, no foul. This is just one of those now bitter rivalries we got in the SEC West.
Well, Brady, it's the whole thing about what is and what should be. Like right now, you look at it and you rightfully say, hey, they didn't do anything that they weren't technically allowed to do. And I've heard the same from those collective folks, which is a new term in and of itself in football that you've heard. Yeah, he didn't do anything that was, it was all above board. It's all above board. It's all above board is a phrase that we've heard a lot. When I listened to Saban last night, to me, I drew a distinction between, you know, what he thinks technically was allowed versus what he thinks should be allowed. And the bottom line is, like, if you and I were out on I-95 down there in South Florida, and that sign says 70, and you and I both go 78, we look at each other, thumbs up. You probably got more expensive shades on than I do, but I thumbs up. We just go on about our business. Now, if someone flies by at 110 on a crotch rocket, it's a little bit different, and we look at him and we say, I don't like that. I don't even think that these guys doing 78 look at themselves as hypocrites when they call out the dude doing 110, is what I'm saying. And the other part of it is we had such a disproportionate landscape last year, state to state, what was allowed, what wasn't allowed. But ultimately, these guys agreed on the most important thing in the room. After all the bickering, after all the name calling, if you push that to the side, both of them, Saban last night, Jimbo Fisher this morning, said we need antitrust legislation federally in the room, or else we're never going to have control of anything. That was actually my biggest takeaway, believe it or not, out of this whole dispute.
You know, the sad thing is, to that point too, it's probably going to be something that's figured out in courts, not even necessarily getting the federal government to step in and do anything. And the reason why I say that is, look at the history of the NFL. It's always been antitrust lawsuits. It's always been the union and players versus the owners in order to be able to tread and make any ground in their CBAs or make any progress. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about essentially moving college football to more of a pro model, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. That's the direction that this is all going now that NIL is open, and it's not going back. We're not changing from this path that we're on right now. So, you know, moving forward, I mean, you've got other collectives and people who have been very outspoken about what they're doing, because I think they're almost enticing someone to say, come challenge this. We already know what the Supreme Court ruling was, 9-0. Come challenge this if we want to create more safeguards or guardrails to how this whole thing is going to operate at this point in time. I don't think you're going to see it. The only thing I'd say is this, though, to Nick Saban's point in regards to what happened in this past recruiting cycle. There is a little something to the fact that Texas A&M, after going 4-4 in the SEC in 2021, gets 8 5-stars when they didn't have 8 5-stars in total the 8 years prior recruiting. So there is a little bit something to that. I will say, I think Nick Saban maybe hit something on the head that maybe upset Jimbo Fisher, but the reality is we'll see what this looks like in a few years. Because remember, Georgia had a couple #1 classes, and who ended up winning the national championship this past year?
Yep.
And being Georgia Bulldogs. Maybe he feels like after losing to A&M last year, they're starting to kind of nip on his heels in Tuscaloosa.
Highest ranked recruiting class of all time, according to 24/7 Sports. So, Josh, what is the fallout from this going to be?
I think you watched a relationship dissolve. I mean, to Brady's point now, that wasn't born last night. Like a lot of what Jimbo Fisher referenced was 1 year old, 5 years old, in some cases 20 years old. So a lot of that was harbored. Man, that's some aged resentment. Like there's an old date on when that was born. It just all came out of Jimbo Fisher this morning. But yet, I mean, we've heard coaches snipe back and forth before, and yet you watch them, you know, all the media scrums around them, all the photographers are ready, and there they are midfield when they're about to face off, shaking hands. I think this is different. Like, I have felt out from both camps today, and it's a pretty mutual shared feeling that, yeah, this is probably beyond repair. Now, that doesn't really impact what's going to happen on the field. The football game will happen as the football game happens. But to this point, I think, Brady, you and I can both agree, there's been a pretty widely held perception that A&M, maybe not this year, but next year. I don't think people are ready to talk about that anymore. I think people look at October 8th, and they go into Tuscaloosa. They just got it done last year with their backup quarterback, so no one wants to hear excuses about backup quarterback. They're going to circle that thing in bright red Sharpie. They're going to probably see Bama as a double-digit favorite if and when we finally get to that point. And yet I don't think anyone's going to be ready to say, Jimbo, just go give it a nice college effort. We don't really expect you to compete with this big bad man in Tuscaloosa for another year or two. I think all that's out the window, too.
And Brady, to that point, I just want.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.